Good morning. Welcome again to Contemporary Philippine Arts in the region. We are now in the Module 7. Our topic is architecture. We have objectives in this lesson. Number one is describe and define architecture as a form of visual art. And then you are going to identify the most important architectural functions, media, and elements. Then assesses current forms of visual art using the elements and the principles. Before we proceed to the lesson proper, I prepared a pretest. Then we have 5 questions only. So please prepare your extra sheet, then and ball pen for to answer these questions. Now, the direction is choose the letter of the correct answer. Number one is it refers to the purpose of structure which designed according to the needs by its organization, individual space definition, proportion, scale, and symmetry. A. Media. B. Elements. C. Functions. D. Qualities. Number 2. It refers to the planning, designing, and constructing buildings and other physical structures. A. Casting. B. Architecture. C. Sculpture. D. Architecture. Number 3. The one who practices architecture is called A. Engineer. B. Founder. C. Organizer. D. Architect. Number 4. Architects choose dimensions of rooms to match the number of people who will occupy the space and the amount of activity that will occur in it. A. Space. B. Line. C. Texture. D. Color. Number 5. The following are man-made materials used in architecture exam. A. Glass. B. Concrete cement. C. Wood. D. Steel. So our topic is all about architecture. So please listen and okay. Now let's define first what is architecture. Architecture is the planning, designing, and constructions of buildings and other physical structures. So, in relation to buildings, architecture has to do with the form, space, and ambience that reflect functional, technical, social, environmental, and aesthetic considerations. So, it requires the creative manipulation and coordination of material, technology, light, and shadow. So combining arts and sciences, the transcendentally beautiful and the completely pragmatic architecture is in all encompassing art. It is the art and science of creating beautiful spaces, of designing structures, of constructing buildings. Architecture has to be a perfect blend of durability, usability, beauty, and economy. Now, uh, ito yung example, itong picture na nakikita niyo. Oh, pag tinitingnan natin yung picture na ito, anong napapansin natin? Of course, in the definition of architecture, through this picture, we can define what is architecture. Pag tinitingnan natin, yan, with light effects, with, of course, the up in applying the the raw materials in doing buildings. So that this picture is the perfect example of architecture. Now, we have also the functions of architecture. Functions is an art based on the principles of utility and beauty, where form follows function. Form follows function is a principle associated with modern architecture and industrial design in the 20th century. Anong ibig sabihin pag 20th century? Pag 20th century ang pinag-usapan, ito yung taon ng 1901 hanggang 1999. That is the 20th century. So this means that the purpose of a building should be the starting point for its design. So nagsimula ang ganitong functions noong 20th century. So napakagaling ng mga tao. Ano, each building has a form to meet its purpose. So the structure is designed according to needs by its organization, individual space definition, proportion, scale, and symmetry. So one can evaluate how well the architecture functions by critiquing the structure's use of these elements of design. If the building's form is appropriate for its use, the building is evaluated positively. Bakit positively? Positively kasi pag napakaganda at appropriate ito sa pangangailangan ng mga tao, ibig sabihin, they can give positive evaluation. So, if the building's form is excessive or unfit for its use, then the building is evaluated negatively. Bakit negatively? Because if the building is useless, there's no use at all, and that it's not functioning, and the people can't use it because there are some negative technicalities in terms of the construction, then hindi maganda ang kalalabasan nito. So, in the functions of architecture ay napaka-importante to. So, the architecture must see to it na they applied the functions para hindi to mabaliwala. Ano? So, they need time to do the planning. Okay? We have media used in architecture. So materiality in architecture is the concept of or applied use of various materials or substance in the medium of building. So architecture uses building materials as its media in the construction of buildings and other physical structures. So many naturally occurring substances such as clay, rocks, sand, wood, even twigs and leaves have been used to construct buildings. Ito yung tinatawag natin, i-highlight natin, ito yung naturally occurring substances. Bakit naturally occurring substances? Because we can find these raw materials in our environment. Ibig sabihin, they are created by God. We can see around us in the mountain, we can see woods, rocks we can see in the mountains also, in the river, in beaches, seas, the clay we can see this, makukuha natin to in mountainous area, yung sand, nakikita natin to sa rivers and of course in seas or in the ocean at sa mga tabi nito, yung mga resorts, then and of course yung mga leaves nakikita natin to sa forested areas. Okay? So apart from naturally occurring materials, many man-made products are in use. So some more and some less synthetic. So a man-made material is a material that is manufactured through human effort, often using natural raw materials. Okay, a list of these man-made materials would be glass, steel, and concrete cement. So they provide the makeup of habitats and structures including homes. So, ibig sabihin, man-made ito. Hindi ginawa ng, hindi natin napupulot lang kung saan-saan compared to the naturally occurring substances. Yung digilandok, yung mga metal, they are man-made. Yung glasses, they are man-made. But the materials to do this, to make these raw materials ay galing din sa naturally occurring substances. Walang mga to pag wala ang mga naturally occurring substances. Pero ito ay ginawa ng mga tao for in the construction of building purposes and other establishments. So they provide the makeup of habitats. Let's proceed to the elements of design in architecture. We perceive information about the works of art through our senses. So, by carefully examining a work of art, we learn to organize our sensory perceptions by identifying them as elements of art. Architects use sensory elements in the preliminary design of a building. So, beginning with lines and shapes, the architect draws an inception of how a building will look after it is constructed. So the sensory elements of architecture include these are the elements of architecture. Number one, line. Number two, shape, texture, color, light and dark, space, and we have five elements. Now, line. What is line in the elements of architecture? Lines are often suggested by its structural material designers choose for their buildings, such as the random lines of natural stone or the slick lines created by beams of steel of wall or walls of glass. So modern buildings often use bold lines created by structural steel cross bracing. So line can also be suggested by the shape and massing of a building. For instance, a building can look horizontal or vertical. You imagine without using line in the construction of building, ano kaya ang mangyari? What would be the result if there's no line in the elements of architecture? Siguro, if we're going to imagine what will happen ay hindi mga siguro liko-liko yung mga beams niya, yung mga poste, hindi maganda, hindi align yung mga uh, paggawa ng mga walls, ano, siguro napakapangit. So ibig sabihin katawaan to taon. So even the carpenter, before, ano, they are using lines during the prehistoric time. People are good also in architecture. Ano, number two is shape. A shape is made when a line is closed and space is enclosed. A two-dimensional shape is okay. A shape is made when a line is closed and space is enclosed. A two-dimensional shape is one that is drawn on a flat surface such as paper. So a three-dimensional shape is one that takes up real space. Architectural drawings often try to indicate what the proposed buildings will look like as a three-dimensional form by the use of perspective. Okay. Napakaganda ito kasi uh, pag hindi nila linaplano yung shape ng isang uh, building ay hindi rin maganda yung kalalabasan nito. Ano, siguro if pag small type of building lang ang plano, without planning sa shape nito ay siguro magiging malaking building. And of course, you need to consider the budget. So, the budget. Yung pag-shape ang pinag-uusapan. Sabi nung nagpapatayo ng bahay, maliit lang na bahay, it's a small type of household. But without using the shape in the as an element ay siguro hindi na magagawa ang dream house ng isang tao. Number three is the texture. Texture is the apparent look or feel of the surface of an art object. Texture is a tactile property and requires touching to be appreciated. Once we know how a material feels, however, we can interpret the texture with our eyes and can tell visually how it might feel. So an architect creates texture in building by certain choices of materials. Heavy jawed stone may be used in building to give it a rough texture, whereas delicate carved wood can give a structure a light and airy look. So texture can also be suggested by the rich layering of shapes and forms on a building. Architects add visual interest to the buildings by using decorative buildings materials such as a siding, stone, and wood carving, or they can vary the pattern of concrete forms. Okay, dapat artistic, creative, artistic yung isang architecture because in the making of a design, they are going to plan para mapaganda ang itsura ng isang bahay. So, uh, pag nanonood tayo sa TV, yung mga artista, uh, pabonggahan ng bahay yan. Ano, yung dream house nila, they are going to uh, spend their money, milyones ang kanilang gagamitin just to build their dream houses. Ano, uh, yung mga wooden type, for example, dito sa College of Engineering and Information Technology, hindi nawawala ang mga wood kasi uh, magka-partner yan yung cement, wood, and of course glasses. Ano, and of course the design is paano baging magmumukhang eskwelahan ng College of Engineering. So they need to align the design to the course which is College of Engineering and Information Technology. Kaya pag tinitingnan nyo ang building type na ito, it's para talagang it can project, it can show that this building is uh, a College of Engineering type na building. Okay? We have also the color. Color is an element of our visual perception that is related to how our eyes perceive light. We differentiate these perceptions and name them red, blue, yellow, etc. So architects use color in the choice of materials used to construct a building. These color choices can be quite subtle, such as using a warm yellow tone concrete instead of a cold gray base, or using a brownish brick instead of the traditional red. However, the architect must consider the color effect of every element of a building construction. So from the earthy colors of primary construction materials like wood, stone, brick, and marble to the expensive variety of colors available for paint, doors, windows, siding, and trim. Once chosen, the architectural drawings and sample boards tell a contractor exactly what color buildings materials to use when constructing a structure. Okay? Uh, ito yung example. I'm going to give an example. Ayun. Ayan, okay? Okay. So, pangit ang isang bahay kung walang color. Kaya, pag tinitingnan natin nowadays, there are, in terms of artistry, they use paint colors to beautify the household. Okay, it's more important to use this one. We have also light and dark. Light and dark are relative perceptions of light. Architects use the concept of light and dark as they create visual interest on a building by choosing shapes that creates a sensation of depth. When some shapes stick out, they leave others in shadow. Narrow openings often appear dark, as in tunnel. A broad, flat spaces look light. Materials can be used to vary the light quality of a building. For instance, a band of tinted window gives the illusion of a dark space wrapping around it. Or pag tinitingnan natin, it can it can uh, give it can define what what type of house if we're going to apply the light and dark, ano. May mga bahay ngayon, parang haunted house, yun. Siyempre, yung mga color, light and dark, sometimes, ganun. Ayun. We have also number 6, the space. Space is the relative position of one three-dimensional object to another. So space is one of the most important considerations an architect must think about while designing a building, because the sizes of rooms and hallways, the height of ceilings, and the ease of entering and exiting each living area must carefully match the function of the building. So architects choose dimensions of rooms to match the number of people who will occupy the space and the amount of activity that will occur in it. So to make a building more interesting, architects will experiment with static quantities of space by varying the width and height of rooms through which people will move. Architects also speak of space as the amount of land that will be occupied by a building on a site. So their meaning R is called open space. So ang issue ngayon sa Tabuk City is the Centro Mall to be constructed soon, and they chose the public market area in Purok 4. Then that is the big issue now. Bakit doon yung setting nun? Because it's the perfect site ng isang mall, because it's the center of Tabuk City. So ibig sabihin, alangan namang ilalagay yung Centro Mall doon sa Talama. Pwede naman, pero paano yung mga tao? Problemahin pa na na bumiyahe pataas. So, ibig sabihin, mas magandang ipatayo ang isang big buildings, isang establishment, pag na nakahango sa pangangailangan ng mga tao. Ayun. So example, again, yung mga uh, yung mga anong tawag doon, gymnasium. Ano? Dito sa Kalinga State University, we need good gymnasium. Kaya ngayon, hindi basta-basta ang ang work ng isang architecture. So they need to plan for it para maganda yung kalalabasan ng isang building. And there are also the MOA Arena ay yung Philippine Arena, and that is the biggest arena in the world. Okay? You can uh, find here in the Philippines. World record. Yung matatagpuan doon sa Manich, Bulacan, the Iglesia ni Cristo, owned by Iglesia ni Cristo. So we have examples here, known architectures in the Philippines. Example here, we have minor Basilica of the Black Nazarene by Jose Maria Zaragoza. And this is a church, a Catholic church. University of Santo Tomas, main building by Father Roque Ruano sa Manila. Far Eastern University by Pablo Antonio. Philippine International Convention Center, PICC. Ginawa ito noong panahon ni Ferdinand Marcos, the late Ferdinand Marcos. Manila City Hall by Antonio M. Toledo. So yung mga pangalan dito they are all architects, okay? We have also Malacanang Palace. Ang gumawa ng Malacanang Palace ng plano nito ay si Luis Roca. I prepared an activity for you. This is the activity direction. Activity 1. In this module, the media used in architecture are discussed. Find out what media has been used in each item given below. Ano yung media na ginamit? Sige. So, example, Kalinga Astrodome, San Sebastian Church, Tabuk City Cathedral, Philippine Arena, M Hotel. Yung hotel dito, biggest hotel sa Kalinga. Ancestral House in Vigan, Nanong Heritage. Meron pa bang heritage na matatagpuan sa Nanong? Fort Santiago, Nipahat, Aguinaldo Shrine. Okay, and we have also the generalization, and we have the post test. There are 10 items in your post quiz in post test. So the direction is identify what is being defined or asked in the following statements. Choose the letter of your answer from the table below. So these are the questions. Okay, please do the activity and submit it on time. Goodbye, guys.